Good morning, everyone. So, as usual, I want to present to you again a real life situation that happens in dental practices. Most of the stories I share with you are stories that actually happen. So, this story is as follows. A dentist approached me about one of their patients where they were doing a root canal treatment, and while they were performing the root canal treatment, the files used to widen the canal and shape the roots separated into the root. And then at the end of the appointment, they set the patient up. Look, I'm really, really sorry. One of the files we used to clean your roots is broken now. I broke it. I'm very sorry for that. I probably have to send you to a specialist to manage that for you. Thank you very much. I'm gonna put some temporary, and here's a referral. Then the patient walk out, leaves the practice. The next day, they call the practice, say, I'm not really happy that the dentist broke this file. I want to see my consent form. I want to see what I'm gonna do. I'm not happy, and they cancel their appointment for the review or the follow-up appointment on the tooth. And the dentist was a little bit worried about that and asked me, what shall I do now? What is the best course of action? So let's talk about that and how can you prevent the situation, of course, from the beginning, and how can you manage it now as well. So first, for credibility, my name is Khaled. I have been a dentist for 20 years. I own my dental practice, Lakeside Dental Spa in Harvey Bay in Queensland. And I took from 1 chair to 20 chair, from 3 staff members to close to 40 staff members over the course of 14 years. And you can check my details below for credibility. Now the question, have I ever broken or separated or fractured, whatever terms I want to use? My best term to use is instrument separation. I will explain to you why. But has this ever happened to me? The answer, of course, is yes. Any dentist who perform root canal treatment at least will face this in their career, early on or late on. It will happen. If it hasn't happened, you haven't done enough root canal treatment. It's a complication that can happen. First, of course, with experience you can avoid it, but I don't want to talk about the clinical stuff about it. I don't want to talk about clinically how can you avoid this from happening and how you can take this separated instrument out of the canal, because that's probably an endodontist will explain it much, much better than me. But I want to talk to you about communication. So number one, in that situation, what went wrong? Because I had a chat with the dentist about that. What went wrong is, number one, is the consent part. So yes, the consent part will explain instrument separation, but how it was presented to the patient is very important. And I will explain that at the end. Number two, if this happened to you, you probably, again, your heart rate is racing, your mouth is dry, you're really scared, you're really panicking about how to provide the information to the patient. And usually you'll say it the wrong way. You set them up, say, hey, I'm really sorry, I broke a file. Now the patient is in their head, this dentist has done a mistake. It's a fault. They should not break a file. They should not break an instrument. Any lay person will think this way. It's an instrument that's broken. You should not break this instrument. Something is wrong with this dentist, and he did something bad to me. I am very angry. I'm very upset. So patient is not happy. Number three, writing clinical records or notes. If you write in your notes, today I was cleaning the canal with file S1 or whatever, and I broke S1 as apical 1/3. I informed the patient of the file breakage. Again, you should not write your notes this way. It's not the best clinical standards, and patients have rights to their notes. So imagine if the patient asks for their notes and the records. They look at the consent form, it says instrument separation. They look at the notes, say, I broke a file. Of course, if I'm a patient, I'll get more upset and more angry, and it will trigger me to seek complaint. So how can you do this differently in your practice so your patients are less worried, are less upset, and also you provide them with better care in terms of how you communicate with them? Number one, the consent part. That's how I present it. And if the patient is listening, we're not trying to trick or deceive patients, but we're trying to communicate with them in a way that they understand all the risks involved with treatment, and we don't want to create panic in their life. We don't want our patients to be upset and panicking the whole time and worried the whole time. So how I present my consent to the patient, I'll explain to them. We have the tooth, it has the roots. The root has the canal or the nerve in it, whether it's necrotic or not. We need to use certain instruments and certain files to go and negotiate those canals and open them up and clean the bacteria out of them, wash them really well and put a filling on. But having a canal that's a straight line is very rare, especially with molars. Sometimes they have a different curve and different accessory canals, and sometimes they can branch in different ways that even in a two-dimensional X-ray we can't see. It could look like that on X-ray, but it have another branch coming a different way. So what I'm trying to say is, as with any medical and dental procedures, there are risks, and I need you to be comfortable with those risks, and you need to understand how we manage those risks as well. Risk one, when I go with my instrument to negotiate those canals, sometimes there is a risk of going in a straight line while the canal is curved, which means we create like a small opening between the root and the bone. And this opening, that means the bone now is exposed through the canal, and there's some bleeding will bleed into the canal, and the chance of this surviving will be very low. And if this happens, I will have to refer you to a root canal specialist to manage and advise whether this tooth needs to be extracted, or they can manage the perforation or this opening that we create into the bone. So that's one complication. Second complication, of course, sometimes when we use this instrument to go into those curved canals, sometimes we create a small ledge will be created in this root. And again, if this happens, we have to refer to a specialist to manage that ledge, or work around it, or advise what can be done after that. Because they have a microscope, they can access different things, and they have more experience in that area, of course. Third complication can happen. This instrument, while it's going to the curve, in some parts of the treatment, it can separate. So part of the instrument can separate into the canal itself. Now, it depends on the situation. If this happens in a certain instrument and a certain timing, sometimes we can finish and leave this instrument there and follow up and review this case every 6 months or 12 months of x-rays to make sure everything's working well. But sometimes it happens early in the treatment and there's still some infection. Of course, we have to again refer to a specialist, a root canal specialist, to manage that and advise whether it needs to be extracted or it can be removed and filled and cleaned properly. So I'm not a specialist, I'm a general dentist. Again, those complications are rare, but they can happen. You need to be aware of them. I need to be aware if they happen. I have to send you a specialist, and usually there are extra fees for the specialist to manage those cases. So if you're comfortable with that, I'm happy to go ahead with the root canal treatment. If you want to see a specialist, I'm happy to refer you. So that's how I present consent form. It's very, very thorough when it comes to root canal treatments. Patient says, yes, go ahead and do it. If this happens, the instrument is separated, I wouldn't create panic. You have to be calm when you provide the information. So temporize, set the patient up. So remember we discussed some of the risks and complications that happen. One of them actually happened today. So I'm not saying I broke a file or I separated an instrument while I'm negotiating one of the roots. The instrument, part of it separated in this curved canal. And now we're in a situation where we need to decide whether, again, it depends if it's at the end of the last file in a vital tooth, you can let the patient know, I'm happy to finish the case as is, as long as you're aware there's a risk, of course, of failures in the future and so on, or I can refer to a specialist. Or if it's early on, now I need to refer to a specialist to manage this case. I'm not gonna charge you anything for today. Although I spend an hour to clean all the other canals, I'm not gonna charge you anything out of goodwill, of course, because you're gonna spend more money with a specialist, but I need to refer you now. So if you present it this way, and you write it in your notes this way, the chance of the patient getting angry at you is very, very low. Also, if they do, from a medical legal point of view, you have provided the best care to your patient. You offer them referrals, you offer them from the beginning to see a specialist, and they agree to see you. What I will add to it as well, again, this should happen a lot in your practice. Out of goodwill, I might suggest, look, I'm happy to cover the fees for the consultation of the specialist, and I actually call the specialist myself, explain the situation, the steps, where we were, which file, which kind of gives them more information. So when they see the patient, they can give them an opinion a lot faster than usual. So I usually ring the specialist and give them the heads up of what happened in the case. If you manage all of that, the chance of patients getting upset or angry or creating panic will be less, and your patients will be happier. Now, my advice to the dentist situation, which is already too late because you mentioned all of that, is okay, just write a simple email to the patient now, let you know we have a follow-up review appointment. You cancel this appointment. Again, I would like you to see a specialist, here's specialist details, and out of goodwill, not admission of fault, out of goodwill, I want to cover your specialist consultation fees, so you're aware of all your options. If you need any help, just let me know. I also tell them to give maybe your indemnity insurance heads up. They might not need to do anything about it now because there is no complaint process at the moment. And if you get faced with a complaint, then you need to manage it through your indemnity. But again, prevention is better. So in the future, you need to manage that completely differently. If you have any questions about that, please let me know in the comments below. If you find this information helpful, make sure you like it and share it with your friends and colleagues. Please subscribe to my channel and you'll be notified when more videos are released. Thank you so much for listening to me. It means a lot to me.